Do I need to take my glasses off? There's a bit of reflection.
I don't know what we're wearing. It's an issue. You cut that out though later. Like cut that out though, because we don't want to listen about what we're wearing. Stop
Do you
checking
want to see?
like what?
Do you want to see something or not?
Yes, I think it's good. Especially when Jake just keeps looking at himself.
Alright, so welcome guys to the first ever Slappy Spawn vlog.
Spatlus?
The Spatlus vlog.
Yeah, the Spatlus vlog. That's beautiful.
Yeah, so what are we actually calling it?
I think, yeah, welcome to the Spatlus vlog. That works. Welcome everybody to the first installment of the Spatlus. We're gonna go with Spatlus. The
Probably
Spatlus
the
vlog.
last.
Yeah, probably never gonna do that again. Spatlus for now. Probably gonna figure out a name that's actually good in the near future. We're going to go through a few things based on the upcoming ACL event in ACL Sydney, or in Sydney. It's called ACL Sydney though. Nailed it. I'm really good at this.
But before we get into that, for those that don't know us, this is of course Atlas, Max Atlas Anderson. I am Jake Spawn Tiberius.
That's the first time you've done a name introduction. You nailed that.
Felt pretty good as well.
Yeah, thanks man. We'll have to beep out the I should probably, oh that's it. My bad.
We are two freelance casters. Recently worked with Riot Games over the winter round of 8.
We did.
And we are going to be bringing ACL Sydney to you live from the Tech Centre in Sydney.
Australian Technology Park.
Yeah, so that's the 19th and 20th of July, so stay tuned for that one. We're just going to go through a couple of things today. We're going to give you our predictions, we're going to go through some player profiles, and hopefully do some fun stuff along the way. So yeah. We can kick it off, I think, with some team rundowns. We did just see Avant-Garde come through from the winter round of 8, taking first place against Immunity in a 5-game series. But there have been some change-ups, so let's go through the teams that are actually attending ACL.
Yeah, let's first talk about, we'll just name the teams first off. It's of course going to be Avant-Garde Ascension, Team Immunity, Team Curse, Team NV, Are You Playing for a Medal, XD, Your Soul Shall Chuffer, and AKG as well, rounding out that lineup of 8 teams. So it's going to be similar to the round of 8 event, but it's going to be over one weekend, which is going to be a lot of games.
And of course, that's the 4 teams from winter that got the automatic invite, as well as 4 teams that went through the online qualifiers for ACL. So it's going to be a very exciting tournament, and we'll touch on it a little bit later on, but we don't know what form some of these teams are going to be coming in.
Yeah, that's the thing.
The Oceanic scene quite unstable at the moment after a major tournament, so there are some roster swaps coming through, so we'll give our opinion on those and a little bit of speculation as well.
Yeah, we're not entirely sure what the switch-ups are going to be. None of these are actually confirmed just yet, so do not quote us on a lot of this stuff, but we have heard a few things in the rumour mill that seem a little bit disturbing as far as the solidarity of a lot of these teams are concerned. But Avant-Garde Ascension is the first team that we're going to mention, and nothing's actually changed. Of course, our winners here who are going through to Cologne, Germany for the wildcard tournament are still going to be together, so that's definitely good.
Yeah, and the one thing about Avant-Garde that we have to mention is Choo Choo's, of course, in year 12, only 17.
Yeah.
So if he can get some time off, he will definitely come up, or they might have to use a sub. So that's the only thing that will change from them. The rest of their players definitely sticking around together and going to be putting a lot of work to obviously go across to Cologne and try and get their spot in the World Championship.
Yeah, and I really, really hope that Choo Choo's does go over there as well, because we saw in the grand final that he was just so strong. His Z play especially was just really, really impressive there against Team Immunity.
Yeah, he of course plays those diverse champion pools, like he has all-in engage assassins, mainly AD assassins that he plays, but then of course the long-range AP poke heavy champions, like the old Nidalee, like Syndra that he can
he seems to play only sort of poke teamfight control or all-in assassin, not a lot of these mid-rangey type picks.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
It's interesting.
The next team, of course, is Immunity, the fan favourites. They've dropped their first LAN tournament in a very, very long time, coming off the back of winter. They're going to be coming across with Swiper in the top lane, Spooks, of course, a jungler, Swiffer in mid, Radiant and Rosie will be rounding out the lineup. However, this is not the confirmed lineup as of yet. We have heard some rumours that there will be a couple of changes. I would hate to see them go through because of how strong this team has been. But definitely stay tuned for that. Yeah,
and it's a little bit of a worry considering the fact that this is the first major loss that they've taken, and a lot of Oceanic teams, when they do take a loss like this, even though it's almost 2 years in the making on the side of Immunity, they tend to just fall apart, and it does seem to be, as far as what the rumour mill is saying, going to be coming up true. So hopefully that doesn't go through, because Team Immunity, despite the fact that they lost Winter, they're still an incredibly strong team.
Yeah, and of course took Avant to 5 games and had some very strong performance. The 2 games they won, particularly game, I think it was 3 with the Anivia pick, was very, very brutal on the side of Immunity. That was almost a stomp. They came out and won it very convincingly. So when they go back to their comfort picks, they can definitely pull it through. Just looks like they had a little bit of miscommunication, and of course they got outpicked in that final game, which led to a narrow loss, but hopefully they stick it out together and they can come up big in ACL.
Yeah, we'll see whether they do manage to come through. Of course, a lot of powerful players there, including that Radio, who has a lot of fan following. Of course, Curse is the next team that we're going to talk about, and this one's a little bit of a worry here because we don't know exactly what the state of Curse is at the moment, just because there have been a few rumors as far as teams moving around, and the fact that Curse isn't allowed to have any other international teams. So, gonna have to be removing that Curse sponsorship, I think.
Yeah, so of course the old Curse lineup that we saw, that was Colo in the top lane, Shelby in jungle, it was Keen, and then it went to
Keen.
Mizui for the tournament, of course, so they didn't have a mid laner for that. Trash Boat and your favourite, Airy, down in the bottom lane.
I loved Airy.
So that was their old lineup. We have heard that there might be some changes coming through. I know that Shelby takes losses particularly hard, although he played a fantastic series. His Eve was brilliant, but just couldn't come up big in the late game. So it'll be interesting with not only the sponsorship through from Curse NA, but also with the actual individual player movements. Of course, Keen leaving was not great for that lineup.
Not at all.
Whatsoever. So they went from being someone that could seriously challenge the likes of AVA and Immunity to a complete unknown coming into this tournament. So it will be interesting to see the team that they do field.
Yeah, and we'll see who actually comes into each position, because there has been a lot of, as we said, speculation. That does bring us to Team NV though, and NV hasn't changed all that much, although we haven't seen very much of them since Winter. It was, of course, Intrepid in that top lane, BMA as the jungler, Heaven's Cruise, or Heaven's Curse there in the middle lane, First Mate on AD, and Mattress on support. Coming over from that jungle role, but back to his roots, his favourite role there in the support. So good to see that they haven't really changed up too much, but Intrepid was actually a sub for the majority of the time, because they did lose, of course, Kulmog there in the top lane.
Yeah, so I guess that's the first big question mark. Will Intrepid stay on the main lineup?
Yeah.
I know that all the players on MV really like playing with Intrepid. He is kind of that rock in the top lane.
Guy too. Like,
fantastic guy. But of course, Kulmog was a big loss because he's a little bit more mechanical than Intrepid. Of course, contributes to the comms a little bit more. The interesting thing about NV is, of course, the BMA Mattress swapper. We need to see whether Mattress does stay in that bottom lane. I think he is much better suited to the support position, particularly with the likes of Morgana and Leona, those 2 champions that we saw a lot, played a brilliant Thresh as well, and just couples well with First Mate, who isn't very aggressive, and Mattress can keep people off him.
Yeah, he really, really is, and I actually made a few stuff-ups in accordance with Mattress, because I only saw him play Morgana and Leona, and then he picked up that Thresh and landed Death Sentence after Death Sentence. He was fantastic on that champion. So has a diverse champion pool, even if you may not necessarily have seen a lot of those champions as of yet. So we'll see how they do go. And of course, First Mate and Mattress, they've started up a fair bit of a cohesion there in the bottom lane as well. They've been playing really well.
Yeah, so
this is an uncomfortable time, mother.
Is it on?
Welcome back, guys. Sorry, we just had to take a short break because Max's mom came upstairs.
I also had to listen to some Pokemon music, which is still going, actually. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, so we're going to get rid of that. It's not embarrassing, it's beautiful.
It's fantastic. We had just got to Are You Playing for a Medal, which is going to be the team coming up after Team NV, which you guys do know, but it's been quite a while for us since we were actually recording the video beforehand. But Are You Playing for a Medal? He's going to be variables in that top lane, Profound, formerly of Avant-Garde Redemption there in the jungle, Chenny Boy in that mid lane, and Chuffer as well, both of those players, of course, being from Team UTS, who qualified through to the winter round of 8 through that collegiate league, which is exciting. And Pause, who was formerly on Team NV and played in, I think it was ACL qualifier for the autumn round of 8 a long time ago.
2 round of 8s ago. Yep, that is
a while
correct.
back.
So, a little bit of a mashup of the team there.
Yeah,
they've been playing okay. You, of course, shout-outed them.
Yeah, and they looked really, really good. They actually took down Team XD, which is going to be the team to follow up afterwards, of course, formerly Dignitas, and they did really, really well. They showed a lot of really strong play, and we saw a lot out of Chuffer and Chenny Boy when they were on Team UTS, and the things that they were doing were actually really quite impressive.
Yeah, and Chenny Boy, of course, is fantastic in that mid lane. We couldn't get enough of it. When they played against NV, of course, I think it was when they pulled out the Galio versus Cassiopeia matchup.
Curse?
No, because
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. That was a different
Heaven's
bracket.
Cruise
Yeah,
played.
the Heaven's Cruise.
Yeah. So, of course, Channy Boy and, of course, went nuts on that Italy game. So, looking forward to them showing us what they've got. It's also good to see that UTS stuck together in some form.
Yeah.
We said it at the end of the round of 8 when they did get eliminated that it's good to see Chuffer and Channy Boy back in the scene.
Yeah, and they played really, really well in their last matchup as well. So, coming from somewhere where you can't really get a large player pool of players that you necessarily want to use, that collegiate league is quite difficult to find the perfect group of 5 players in just one university. That's really, really quite difficult. So now that they've sort of come out of that, we'll see whether they can make a name for themselves. And they looked really, really, really good. They qualified first through in the qualifier there for ACL. So really, really good stuff. We'll see what they can bring us.
Yeah, definitely. Next team is, of course, XD. That's got Niwa in the top lane, Zahi, Claire in the mid lane, Uber Giants Bro, AD, and then T-Gun, of course, playing support.
Yeah, this has changed a little bit here as well. Niwa we haven't seen much of. Pretty standard top laner, plays a lot of Shyvana, very, very comfortable on that one. A little bit of a swiper 2.0 you could imagine. Doesn't play as much Tryndamere though, unfortunately. And Zahi coming over from YSSC.
Yeah, definitely, and that's a little bit of a mashup there because YSSC, of course, had a great showing in the round of 8. They were very entertaining games, pushed NV to 3 games.
They certainly did.
So sad to see them go. Uber Giants Bro, of course, in that bottom lane with someone like T-Gun is going to be very entertaining to watch. Both fantastic players.
Yeah, and really, really ham as well. And T-Gun playing any of his grab champions, known for his Blitzcrank, hovers that almost every single game that he plays just to make sure everyone knows that he is the Blitzcrank of old. Of course, did come over from professional StarCraft as well, so a lot of really good mechanics there on his champions, just because when you see StarCraft players come over, I mean, they know how to move their fingers across a keyboard.
Yeah, get that APM up nice and high.
His macro game's real good.
Next team, YSSC. So this is your favourite team. You can take us through it.
Yeah, so this is going to be Jack Attack in the top lane, Guo, or Guo. I think I asked how to pronounce his name, and honestly, I got like 15 different responses. I think one of them was Gak. So I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to go with Guo, though. It's G-U and O. Okay, you can look him up. He's a great player. Little Kitty Cheese still there in the middle lane, often temp name 507. If you're a bit confused about who's in the mid lane, his Smurf's name is, of course, temp name 507. You can catch him on that one. Danian in the bottom lane, of course, on AD. And the Flying Jew on the support role, of course, known for his Thresh. Really ham on that one, and I love this team. And apparently, Guo coming into the team has brought a lot more synergy with that mid laner. Of course, Zahi formerly on the team, and just didn't quite mesh as well with Little Cutie Cheese, but now that Little Cutie Cheese brought in his friend Guo, and they've been performing quite well together, although we did see them actually fall down to, I think it was XD in the qualifier, but they were still managing to get through, so it was okay.
Yeah, and the great thing about YSSC is the fact that Jack Attack, Denian, and Flying Jew are all these rock solid players in lane, and leave it open for Little Cutie Cheese, and now that he's joined by Guo, going to be a lot of attention focused on that mid lane. So I expect teams to target that area as well against them. Little Cutie Cheese, of course, famous for that Swain and the Ziggs. Yeah. Very, very good player. And Denian has stepped his play up massively of late. He was known as a player that just used to farm under tower, get his CS up, and try and carry himself into the lane game.
Played a lot of Graves. Yeah. A lot of Graves. I remember that it was every single game that you cast with Denian would just be Graves every game, and he'd sit back and just throw out a buckshot in a teamfight every now and again. But now, on that Lucian, on that Ashe as well, flashing forward, we saw his Twitch play. I mean, it looked stupid as hell, but flashing a death sentence into the enemy team, that looked manly. I gave him respect for that.
Yeah, and of course, so it's just a switch up in playstyle. Playing with Little Cutie Cheese, you would want to go a little bit more aggressive than you would normally in any other team. So having that bot lane, especially with Flying Jew, who is a fantastic Thresh player, can reposition yourself around. So exciting stuff coming out of YSSC, and I look forward to seeing what can happen here.
Yeah, and I haven't actually seen Denian play on the 4.10 patch either. So AD is being played very, very differently. You actually just mentioned to me that the double BF sword into Last Whisper is now the new Archer build for these sort of more spell-heavy AD carries. I find that completely ridiculous, but I like it.
Yeah, so of course the patch hit ADs in a unique way. Some people think they're actually stronger now. Can bring a diverse pool in. Of course, with the changes to Randuin's Omens means that like Twitch is super awesome still. Of course, you can bring that Cogmore in. He's now a priority pick with that Q. One of the few ADs that can go toe-to-toe with the Twitch once you get ambushed. So it's nice to see that these older AD carries will go back to Infinity Edge rushes, and they should be pumping out a lot of damage.
Yeah, Tristana and Ashe have also seen a lot more play as well. So we might be seeing that Cloud9 bottom laner of old, that Ash Zyra bottom lane, which everyone loves. Am I right?
Yeah, particularly if Denian's on Ash, because he is a very good Ash player. Last team coming through is AKG, which we don't know a lot about.
Yeah, we don't know a lot about AKG. I did just get the rosters here. If we do come over and have a look, I can read out the names if I can find them. Here we are. We've got Sage Boy. God, I hate these names. AKG June, White, Moran, Nada. Nada I've actually seen a lot, and Lovers as well.
Yeah.
Is there.
So I have seen Nada and Lovers. I haven't seen the rest of their players. AKG, of course, has a massive pool of players that they can call upon.
They do.
So it'll be interesting to see what they bring through. Of course, they hold a lot of internal tournaments as well, so we don't really get to see them on LAN.
Yeah, it's sort of AKG. You see them around the traps a lot. If you're playing that solo queue, often there'll be players with AKG in the start of their name. It's just what happens. It seems to be a lot of them. So we'll see what they do bring to the table and whether they've got that team synergy that you necessarily need, or with so many people they can use to put into a roster, whether they've had enough time playing together.
Yeah, and especially against such good teams that we're seeing coming through. Like, in some way or another, this is 6 of 8 teams from Winter.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a very, very interesting bracket to throw AKG and XD into.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of stronger players as well. I think XD's actually looking pretty good. I mean, they lost their Uber bottom lane with Little Uber Giant there, of course, going over to play football instead of League of Legends. There was a cute little article on the internet actually about that.
Yeah, and making the transition from professional video game player, putting himself into the draft. So that's fantastic for him. It's good to see people move on because, of course, not great infrastructure around League of Legends at the moment. So moving into something that can be more of a career. So
yeah, and I think he's also keeping his options open a bit as well. But he knew that he wanted to be playing football and he just couldn't dedicate enough time to staying at the top of his game in League, which I think is admirable. The fact that he knew that he needed to be dedicating a certain amount of time in order to be useful for his teams and making sure that he steps out if he can't actually be there. But Uber Giants Pro is still going to be playing, so still going to be representing the Uber Gang family there in the bottom lane.
Yeah, definitely. So that rounds out the 8 teams that we think are going to be going. Of course, they still have until tomorrow to confirm their spots. Otherwise, it'll go to the next highest ranking teams. But let's move on to some predictions. Who do we think will be the top 4 teams?
I think it's pretty obvious. Your Soul Shell Chuffer is just going to smash everyone. No, that's probably not it. Avant-Garde Ascension are still looking fantastically strong. They really, really are. And of course, after their performance at Supernova Perth, you cannot argue that they're probably one of the top teams here in Australia or in Oceania.
So I think if we go top 4 for me, I think XD does sneak in there. I think that AVA, of course, Ascension, fantastic, as you just said. I think Immunity will be in there. And you can never count out NV, but I think it'll be between them and YSSC.
Yeah, and I think the dark horse here definitely is going to be Are You Playing for a Medal? Because those guys in the qualifier played incredibly well. I'd be really interested to see how they go moving up the bracket and whether they can really shake some heads and take down some teams that we know and love and see whether they can really stamp their name on the ACL trophy, if that makes sense.
And it would be great to see all these players getting together and coming through and giving a good showing because that's what we want. A lot of them are Sydney based as well. I think winner for this, for me, is Immunity. I don't think that you can look past them. I think that Ascension will put up a very, very good fight. I think that they're both very evenly matched teams, but this is about pride for Immunity now. They haven't lost in a couple of years on a LAN event. They get maps taken off them very rarely, so for them to lose another series would shock the absolute heck out of me.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good point. And considering the fact that they did lose to Avant-Garde Ascension in what we actually thought might have been more champion select more than anything else, I think that their preparation is going to be way, way higher for Avant-Garde Ascension this time around. And I think that it might have come down to a little bit of lack of preparation because they may have got slightly complacent just considering the fact that Immunity just don't lose here in Oceania.
Yeah, and of course, moving over the journey to Perth, of course, there was some question about the ping, whether it's through spooks off Lee Sin. Of course, that's going to be a lot better here. They were playing on about 70.
We saw him do some pretty amazing plays on that Lee Sin regardless.
Even Carbon was saying that on the podcast we did together that you couldn't really insect people. The ping was a little bit too high. It felt like there was about a half a second delay. So I'm not saying that that is the reason behind it. I'm just saying that I think they will be much more comfortable in a more familiar setting.
Yeah, you got to remember that Avant-Garde Ascension, of course, had the same experience as well.
Oh no, of course, and not taking anything away from that.
Yeah, just making sure. Definitely a deserved victory.
100%.
Yeah, but yeah, Immunity definitely going to be strong, and I think that they've got a lot to prove to everyone now that they have fallen to Avant-Garde Ascension. And if AV take it again, then I'm going to be feeling really, really good about them going over to Wildcard and really putting on a strong showing because Immunity in their own right are fantastic. We saw them against CJ Blaze. the Korean powerhouse, and they did really well until 20 minutes.
Yeah, and they came out of laning phase massive. A lot of their players had very, very good games. Speaking about the AV moving on to the wildcard just for a second, you have to think that with the upcoming lands, of course, with ACL, there will be something a little bit closer to the Cologne event, I'm sure, and then getting as much practice as possible. I would assume that they've been scrimming immunity a lot, because whilst these guys are competitors against each other, there's a lot at stake for us to actually make World Championships out of the wildcard tournament. So that's been announced now. Hopefully we can get through our bracket and get into the World Championship. And I think that Immunity, whilst having lost to Avant-Garde, will be doing everything they can to make sure that Avant-Garde get as far into World Championships as possible, because of course that brings Immunity back up. If they lose to a team that can't even make Worlds, it's going to be a little bit worse than losing to a team that does fantastic on the world stage.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and I think they deserve their spot there, and I think that Oceania as a whole needs to help Avant-Garde as much as possible, and Immunity are in the best position to do that. And it'd be silly of them not to actually try and help, because the better we do, the more respect our scene's going to get, and the faster it's going to be growing into that professional league that we all want it to be.
So a fantastic example of the situation was, of course, when Keen from Curse looked so strong with him in the roster, even took it to Immunity a little bit in the round of 8. And then,
they
of
drop
course,
games off Immunity often, quite often.
Went across to America to join Curse Academy, so just left a hole in that mid lane, which leads us on to our next topic, and that's retaining players in the infrastructure around League of Legends, and whether we can actually get some personalities in the league too, because League of Legends is a lot about good games.
Yeah.
And I think that we're starting to put them on in the scene, but it's also a lot about marketable personality. And I think that's what's really important about Avant-Garde. We're starting to see more of Ejim. He's a fantastic guy. Spent a lot of time with him.
Yep.
Seeing more of Carbon, their jungler. He's kind of their leader.
Doesn't like shoes very much.
Doesn't like shoes.
Cool.
Kicks them off. I sat next to him on the plane ride home. He was laying everywhere. So I think that the more of these personalities we get out there, the better the Oceanic scene will be. And I think a fantastic example is Minky Whale. Yeah,
Minky Whale's brilliant. Does stream a lot, of course, gets some fantastic viewership as well, and just talks way too much. Never ask him the story about where he got his name. And this has been Minky Whale forever, and I think it's fantastic that he's finally got out there, started streaming, of course, moved into the Avant-Garde house, so now has a little bit more infrastructure in order to do that. And so is now sort of getting his name around there, which is brilliant for the Oceanic scene, because we need to start having people that people want to follow and get sort of attached to personally, which is what TSM did originally, which is why their following is so huge. They had vlogs that they'd have to do every single week, every team member. And these guys are not necessarily, like at the beginning, they weren't that socially apt, but after a while, they start becoming celebrities.
Yeah, and we have some great personalities in the scene, is what I think we're getting at. So if we put a little bit more time into these guys and get them that following, I think they could really take off, particularly in the cases of Avant-Garde, Ascension, and Immunity.
Yeah, I think Avant-Garde Ascension definitely have a lot of potential here to become that kind of team. And Immunity, I think, are really starting to get there. Of course, Radier is almost a household name for any League fan here in Australia, which is definitely cool. So anyway, guys, we are wrapping this one up because, of course, we have been speaking for quite some time. And I have, of course, been Atlas. This is Spawn. We've just done a bit of a run through of ACL. So I hope you guys have enjoyed what you've heard so far. Hopefully we'll be able to have some more videos out for you in the future.
We can say thank you guys so much for tuning in. This has, of course, been Spatlus. I am Spawn, this is Atlas.
And that's why it's Spatlus, because it's like word fusion.
Wow.
Right? This is pretty good.
Yeah? Stop f***ing up my...
There's no square words. We'll have to cut that bit out, okay? But otherwise, this is going to be us signing off. Of course, we will see ya. See you later. See you bye. See ya.